All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bodybuilding News Network. I'm your host, Saunch, and we have a rather interesting video for you today. So I hope you do enjoy. But before we get into it, I wanted to highlight my intent in this video. My intent is not to bash or slander Derek from My Plates More Dates. He makes fantastic content, enjoyable content. I've watched him several times, so he's funny, very informative on the performance side of maybe not competitive bodybuilding, but bodybuilding in general. So definitely consider checking out his channel if you have not already. And it also, my intent is not to bash or slander Nick Miller from Nick Strength and Power. Again, I'm sure we all grew up watching his content. I'm sure a lot of you still do watch his content. So I always appreciate what he does, what he has done for our sport. But this video is intended to provide maybe not alternate, but another viewpoint of some previous events that have taken place in our community of competitive bodybuilding, both ifbb and NPC. But if you have not seen it already, there is a post on, I believe it's Nick Strength and Power's YouTube channel, talking about some of his videos. Looks like anything with live stream footage was removed without warning. And this is a big issue if you're making content. If you're a content creator and you're making updates on competitive bodybuilding competitions, there's a window of opportunity for when most of the viewers, the fans, you and me, myself, are going to be interested in this content. So if Nick's content is getting striked down, it's really taking thousands of dollars, literally thousands of dollars out of his pocket that he could have, invested or saved or reinvested into our community. So it's a big issue. He also did another post talking about how he spent the entire last year. I'm summarizing his post, creating interest for the Olympia. And then the Olympia did not give him any kind of courtesy or warning about removing the clips. They simply just did like a sweeping purge of anything related to the Olympia live stream or the Olympia pay-per-view. And I don't think there's much to argue here. I think Nick has done a admirable job at promoting competitive bodybuilding competitions, especially the higher echelons ones, the Arnold Classics, the Olympias, maybe not so much the smaller ones, but he's definitely done a great job, a great service for our community, and he's well appreciated inside of our community for what he does do. During Derek from More Plates, More Dates, during his video, he talked about how Nick is and this is all summarized. I'm not verbatim quoting them, so there might be some discrepancies. I do apologize. But he said that he was the biggest bodybuilding outlet in the industry, and he gets more views than ... any other person who covers it, to include its own media, Olympia TV. Absolutely. Nick Strength and Power is the largest bodybuilding news outlet on YouTube, especially on YouTube, with over 1 million, 1.1, I believe it was the last time I checked, subscribers. And usually his videos are averaging around 100 to 300,000 views each time. That's a lot of cheddar. And that's a lot of eyeballs coming onto our sport, looking at the content, the competition, the athletes. It's a imperative service that Nick has done for us. Derek also said that no one else has created hype at this scale that Nick is, and his channel needs to be treated well. Nick is probably, I think he says, the biggest cheerleader in our sport. And I also can't disagree with that. I think Nick is a massive advocate for competitive bodybuilding, especially these big shows, Arnold Classic, the Olympia, and especially big names in the Olympia, the Big Ramis, the Nick Walkers, the Hadi Chupins, especially Hadi Chupin. I know Nick is a huge fan, as am I, the two-time People's Champ at this year's 2020 and 2021 Mr. Olympia. But I also wanted to do a little bit of content service here. There are a plethora of fantastic content creators within our space, to include myself, obviously, that make bodybuilding content almost on a daily, some of them actually on a daily. It's truly impressive. Several of these guys make full-time incomes, to include Nick Strength and Power, off making content like this advocating for the sport of competitive bodybuilding, or just bodybuilding in general, right? Or fitness. I know Nick does bodybuilding, fitness, powerlifting, a plethora of fitness events. And I made a quick 10 list of some of my favorite content creators currently. In no particular order. Obviously, the audience sizes are going to change, so you'll notice that it's not in order. But the first one I wanted to highlight was Mark's Max Muscle. Now, me and Mark, we actually have a podcast together on this channel, Two Bros, One Pod. We talk about a lot of different things, but Mark has 24,000 subscribers, and he's been advocating for athletes and making content both as an historian and as a journalist in current events for over 3 years. So he makes fantastic content. Highly recommend. Tominator, I'm sure if you're watching this, you know who Tominator is. 70,000 subscribers and over 5 years of coverage, in-depth breakdowns and analyses of competitive bodybuilding, both pre and post shows, giving you predictions and in-depth breakdowns of these shows, athletes, in a lot of deep, detailed nuances that a lot of people aren't going to see. Highly recommend Tominator. RX Muscle, Dave Palumbo and his team, a plethora of content over there. Dave's been doing it for something like 12 years. He's been advocating and covering competitive bodybuilding, both NPC, IFBB, interviews, different things like that, talk shows, both on the informative and comical. Yeah, that's a word. Comical side of competitive bodybuilding. So Dave is a treasure in our sport, and he's been continually updating and being creative in his content. And I know me as a fan and as a journalist here in our space, we all appreciate Dave Palumbo and the work he's put in. Xavier Willis over at Desktop Bodybuilding. Now, Xavier is actually relatively new to the competitive bodybuilding scene on the journalism side, but he has been competing for years. So one of the few guys in the journalism space that also is a competitor in bodybuilding. Xavier with Desktop Bodybuilding, 30,000 subscribers as of today and growing daily. And he's been doing this for, like I said, 2 years. Xavier does a lot of stuff that I really like, and you'll see flares of his content here on the Bodybuilding News Network. Daily bodybuilding updates and shows like Bodybuilding Today and NPC Weekly Recap that I do with Ty Jordan weekly. Xavier does a fantastic job with that, as well as athlete spotlights, where he does interviews with up and comer NPC athletes and some of the top bodybuilders in the IFBB, NPC, and Elite Pro. So a huge advocate for our sport, great content creator. Highly recommend Xavier with Desktop Bodybuilding. Superset Man, a good man, a new guy to our sport. I actually had an interview with him. Very fun guy out of Romania. He has over 8,000 subscribers, and he does something similar to Tominator and a mixture of Mark's Max Muscle, kind of like a flare of both of those culminated into a fantastic account. He does a lot of great Photoshop editing work that, I mean, takes years of work in perfection. But I know that he's been making great content, breaking down people's physiques, cookie cutting people together to make like the perfect bodybuilder. That's been a really fun series that he's been revisiting. So I definitely recommend the Superset Man. Check him out. Fernando Arroyo, one of the few massive followings on Instagram, and it also has correlated into YouTube as well. He does a Spanish-only broadcasting of some of the biggest bodybuilding shows and physique breakdowns and comparisons. So obviously I don't watch his content because it's in Spanish, but I do appreciate what he does over on Instagram, as well as people like Buys and Tries, and then people of the like, Daniel with Bodybuilders Without Borders, all those guys. We could do a separate episode just talking about the amazing content creators on Instagram in our sport, but I wanted to highlight Fernando Arroyo, 3,000 subscribers and over 3 years of Spanish content. Now, Valuetainment, this one's kind of tricky. 3,000 subscribers, 8 years of content. Valuetainment, they've been kind of making a lot of different types of value and entertainment. But he has had a lot of prominent bodybuilders, the Ronnie Colemans, the Phil Heaths, maybe Jay Cutler might have been on there a couple times, Dorian Yates, people like that. He's made a lot of cool content there. Interesting content, gives me a flair of Generation Iron, but not to the extent in some capacities. We can talk about that in a different video. But Valuetainment makes great content as well. Nick Trigili, a newcomer for me. I haven't watched his content much at all, but he has 11,000 subscribers on his bodybuilding and bullcrap, if you know what I mean. Bodybuilding and bullcrap. 11,000 subscribers. He's been doing it for about a year. A lot of different types of content, maybe like a Greg Doucette style. Check it out if you're interested in something like that. Fuad Abiad's Real Bodybuilding Podcast, RBP. Obviously, Fuad has made a fantastic empire, borderline empire over there with the bro chats and the British boys. I'm not sure what he calls that one. And then the RBP, where he gets in-depth interviews with different athletes, coaches, sponsors, a plethora of different unique and interesting individuals in our sport. 260,000 subscribers. And he's been making content, I think, for 9 years, but for about 4 years, he's been doing competitive bodybuilding coverage and vlogs and informative videos on training, nutrition, diet, and supplementation. And lastly, I already mentioned him before, Vlad with Generation Iron Fitness Network is what it's called. 425,000 subscribers in 7 years of content creation in our, let's just say, fitness community. They do a lot of different stuff, a lot of interviews. There's some controversy behind them. We could talk about that in another video if you're interested, but those would be like the top 10 to include Nick Strength and Power, obviously, on that list. I think Ivan Bodybuilding, he makes content as well. He used to do old school labs, but I haven't seen him since then, but I know he makes content as well. Check out Ivan Bodybuilding. But guys, pretty much the emphasis on that one. There's a lot of content creators out there. Obviously, Derek from More Plates, More Dates, he's not going to know every single one of them. Shoot, I couldn't even think of all 10 of them off the top of my head. I had to go through my subscription list and find out who I actually watched. But there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of advocates for bodybuilding, athletes, contests, and the likes. Getting back to some of the highlights of Derek's video, he said that Nick has dedicated his entire life to hyping up the Olympia. Obviously, it's off the cuff. He just said it the way he said it. I'm sure if he wanted to rephrase it, he could. And for an average Nick Strength and Power, Nick Miller has made content about competitive bodybuilding for about 7 years now, covering anything from interesting videos like, should Kai Green retire, or is Kai Green going to compete, things like that, but then also some of his opinions on post competition videos, not so much in-depth analyses, I think it's analyses, not so much in-depth analyses of physiques and comparisons and side-by-sides, but more quick Instagram-based photos, videos, updates on athletes and physique updates. He does a great job of making Instagram photos and videos into full-length production videos, over 10, sometimes even 15 minutes long. Something else that Derek mentioned was that, quote unquote, ... in paraphrasing, this guy profits off the Olympia and makes content that entices viewers to the sport. So obviously, the videos that Nick Strength and Power actually clicks monetize on, you have an option. You don't have to always monetize your videos. The videos that he does monetize, obviously he's making thousands of dollars off these videos. And I think he's deserved to earn that revenue after all these years he's put into making this content. But the second half I thought was a little bit more interesting. The content that Nick makes is designed to influence the viewers to get into the sport, to attend the events, to buy the pay-per-views. This is where I kind of differed from it. When I started to think about, especially the last, I'd say, year and a half, that's kind of where I stopped watching Nick's content. And that's another whole video. But with Nick's content, I always try to think about what the intent of Nick's videos are for. Like, what is he trying to do with these videos? So obviously he's making money off this content, but is he advocating for the athletes? He's publicly said that he doesn't want to do interviews, which is probably the biggest way that Nick could advocate for these athletes, especially the up and comers. Does he do spotlight videos highlighting up and comers in the NPC? Again, kind of double tapping on the interviews. Does he bring new talent in to showcase all this beautiful muscle and beautiful physiques coming into the NPC and the IFBB? No, he does not. Does Nick do coverage of smaller shows, NPC, IFBB? Not so much. He does the big shows. I kind of talked about it earlier. He talks about the Mr. Olympias. He talks about the Arnold Classics, the New York Pros, Chicago Pro, Tampa Pro, the big ones, maybe the Dallas Europa Pro back in the day, the Dallas Pro now, or the Texas Pro. It's actually called the Texas Pro now. And then maybe you're going to look at like the Arnold South Africa, Arnold Brazil, Arnold Australia, things of that nature. But I think it's an interesting topic to think about of what the intent of the content is, because that's really going to lead into the next couple of questions. With Nick's videos getting striked down and demonetized, well, actually just completely copyright striked and deleted, and then kind of making that void of income for Nick. Obviously, he can make more videos and the audience is there to watch it. But when you think about the intent of Nick's content, I feel like that came into play with what the Olympia did, or at least whatever company they hired to strike down videos, because my channel could just be deleted for the content that I make. But I think that the Olympia understands the intent of my content. They understand the intent of Fernando Arroyo, the intent of Fuad Abiad's, Mark's Max Muscle. I think the Olympia sees that we want to advocate for the athletes. We want to bring in these new talents and showcase them to the support and really advocate for our athletes and our sports. I feel like that's been a massive spot where Nick Strength and Power's channel has lacked. And I think that the Olympia has seen that. They've seen that this is, I don't want to say a money grab, because Nick has earned the finances that he's generated through his channel, but there's definitely something of a lackluster taste to be left in your mouth after watching someone like Nick Strength and Power's Olympia coverage. And that's the main reason I stopped watching, because I just felt like something was wrong and I couldn't really figure it out. And eventually I figured it out, but I typically don't talk about it here. But Derek made a really cool video talking about Nick Strength and Power's videos getting flagged. I thought I'd share my opinion on it and kind of my opinion and my view about the whole Nick Strength and Power hemisphere. I don't think that a majority of Nick's audience is going to go to these shows or buy the pay-per-view. And also his content isn't specifically created to advocate for the athletes and all contests, not just Mr. Olympia. And for that reason, I believe that the Olympia struck down their videos, or his videos. So that's my opinion, guys. Let me know in the comment below how far off I am, or if you think I'm kind of hitting the right note here. Subscribe if you enjoy this style of content. Check out my other videos with athlete spotlight videos, interviews, and contest coverage of some of the biggest and smallest shows in the IFBB and NPC. All my links are in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one.